All right, today we're going to do something called finding the determinant of a matrix. So a determinant is a specific number that's defined for only square matrices. So things that are 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 or 4 by 4. So a perfect square matrix. And it's really just used to know whether or not a matrix can be inverted or not. We're going to take inverse matrices next task. So we're going to focus on just the determinant right now, and we'll start inversing matrices on our next one. Usually it's asking determinant A is usually how we are asking for a determinant. Sometimes it uses straight lines to ask for a determinant, so both mean find the determinant. We have a specific formula. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cross section, A times D, and subtract it minus this cross section, C times B. And so I'm going to do that for each of those. So I'm going to multiply. Here's this first one. If I were to find the determinant would equal 0 times negative 2, and I'll subtract that minus negative 6 times negative 4. Negative 6 times negative 4. I'll put those both in some parentheses so we know that we're multiplying. So 0 times negative 2 is 0. And negative 6 times negative 4 is a positive 24. So my determinant is negative 24. Let's do that again with number 2. I'm going to multiply cross section here. Negative 6 times negative 6. And I will subtract it times this cross section. 6 times 0. So I have negative times a negative becomes a positive 36. And I'm going to subtract it minus 6 times 0, which is 0. So my determinant is 36. See if you can solve 3 and 4, and I'll put the answers up in just a few moments. And you should have gotten the answers negative 3 and negative 24 as your determinant for 3 and 4. All right, it gets a little bit more complicated when we start doing a determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix. And so there's this nice big long formula. Essentially, I'm taking this 3 by 3 matrix and I'm taking one number from the first row and multiplying it times the determinant of my 2 bottom sections not included in that row or column. And then I'm going to take B, the number in my second row, and multiply it times DG and FI. So the 2 from from the area not in the same column or row as that number. And then my last part, I'm going to take this third number, C, and multiply it times the determinant of a matrix made up of D, G, E, and F, essentially my rows and columns not included in that first row and third column where that C is located. So let's go ahead and show an example of this. I'm going to start off with taking my first number, 3, and I'm going to multiply it times the determinant of a matrix made up of the numbers not in the same row or column. So that would be these 4 right here. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 2, and negative 3. And then I'm going to have a subtraction sign, and I'm going to use my second number, negative 2, times the determinant in a matrices made up of the numbers not in the same column or row. So that would be 3, 3, negative 2, negative 3. And then I have a plus sign times my C, which is that third number in my first row. So 1 times the determinant made up of the matrices not in that same column or row. So that would be these 4 numbers right here. 3, negative 1, 3, negative 2. And now I just need to solve. Most of this is going to be solving, the determinants of each piece. So I'm going to first figure out my determinant. I'm going to multiply negative 1 times negative 3 and subtract it from negative 2 times negative 2. So that gives me 3 minus, is that positive 4? So I got negative 1, and I'm going to bring down my 3 here. 3 times negative 1 is my first section of that. I'm going to go ahead and bring down this minus sign. And then my second one, I'm going to find this determinant. I know it's going to be negative 2 times whatever I might get as my determinant here. So 3 times negative 3 minus 3 times negative 2. And so I'll get negative 9 minus negative 6. That minus a negative, I go ahead and change to plus a positive. And so I get negative 3. So negative 2 times negative 3 is my next section. I'm going to go ahead and work on this last part. I'm going to bring down my plus sign. And I know it's going to be 1 times something. So let's figure out this determinant. My cross section here. 3 times negative 2 minus 3 times negative 1. Negative 1. And so I got negative 6 minus negative 3. Again, I always change that to plus a positive. And so negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. And so now I can do these last 3 multiplication problems. I got negative 3 minus positive 6 plus negative 3. And if I work that out in my head, negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9. Minus 3 is going to give me negative 12 as my determinant of that 3 by 3 matrices. Now your job is to find the determinant for each matrix on this page. So you have a lot of 2 by 2s here, but then you're going to need to use that 3 by 3 formula for these ones. And the last one, you get to make up your own matrix as long as it has the determinant of 12. So figure out what cross sections would subtract to equal 12. That is it.